It was just another Saturday morning at the mall. The lights were bright, the floors were shiny, and the smell of greasy food already hung in the air. People walked by in groups, laughing, holding coffee and shopping bags. Life seemed normal, except for one teenager behind the counter of a small food kiosk, wiping down tables with tired eyes. He had been there since 7 a.m., before most people even thought about breakfast. He wore the same uniform as everyone else, red shirt, black apron, name tag that read Ethan, but unlike some of his coworkers, he wasn't working for spending money or video games. He was working because they needed the money at home. His parents both worked long hours, but it still wasn't enough. Rent was high, bills kept coming, and sometimes groceries were a stretch. So Ethan took on extra shifts, weekends, holidays, even days when he had tests the next morning. He never said no to more hours. Today, though, he felt like he was running on empty. He hadn't slept well. His eyes burned from lack of rest, and his feet ached from standing all morning. Still, he smiled when customers came up, took their orders, and handed them steaming trays of food. He didn't want anyone to think he was struggling. Not here, not now. Behind the scenes, things weren't easy. He had stayed up late the night before finishing homework after his shift ended. He remembered sitting at the kitchen table trying to keep his head up while reading a textbook, the clock ticking past midnight. He had fallen asleep with his pencil in hand. At school, teachers praised him for being responsible. Friends thought he was lucky to have a job. But no one really knew what it cost him. The late nights, the missed hangouts, the way his backpack always looked heavier than it should. Still, he pushed through, because he had to. Later that day, something changed. The mall had set up a small event space near the main entrance. A banner was hanging above the stage. Meet the Future, a special talk with Daniel Mercer. Some kind of big-shot business guy was coming to speak. Ethan didn't care much at first. He figured it would be another talk about chasing dreams and working hard. But then his manager came over during his break and told him to go. "You're representing the team," she said, "and you've earned it." So Ethan went, still wearing his apron and name tag. He grabbed a seat toward the back, hoping no one would notice if he nodded off. He wasn't in the mood for speeches. He was too tired to be inspired. The room slowly filled with other teen workers from around the mall. Baristas, cashiers, janitors, delivery drivers. They sat quietly, some whispering, others scrolling on their phones. Most looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Then the speaker walked on stage. He was older, maybe late 40s, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt. No tie, no flashy watch, just a calm smile and a confident walk. He introduced himself as Daniel Mercer, founder of a tech company that started small and grew into something huge. People clapped politely. He began talking, not about success or riches, but about struggle, about waking up early, working late, feeling invisible. He talked about how hard it is to build something from nothing, especially when you're young and nobody expects anything from you. Ethan listened. Really listened. Daniel shared stories about working 3 jobs in high school, about sleeping in his car between shifts, about the time someone finally saw him, not just his work, but him, and gave him a chance. Something clicked. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt seen. As Daniel opened the floor for questions, hands shot up. Most asked about startups, college, or how to get rich quick. Typical stuff. But Ethan sat still, thinking. He looked around, at the faces in the crowd, at the workers who cleaned floors and stocked shelves and flipped burgers, at the ones who showed up every day without complaints even when they were tired or sad or barely getting by. He raised his hand. No one else did. Daniel pointed to him. Ethan stood up slowly, heart pounding. He didn't know what he was about to say, but he knew he had to say it because for once someone was listening. The air felt heavier as Ethan stood up. His hand was still raised, but now it was lowered slowly. He looked around. Some eyes were on him, others still scrolling or whispering. The speaker, Daniel, smiled politely and waited. Ethan cleared his throat. His voice came out a little shaky at first, but he kept going. I I guess I want to say something that nobody ever asks, he started. Daniel nodded. Go ahead. Ethan took a breath. He didn't plan this, but he had thought about it every night after work. Every time he sat alone in the dark trying not to fall asleep over homework. Every time he missed hanging out with friends because he had to pick up a shift. How do you keep going, he said, when you're working so hard just to survive, that there's no time left to dream? A silence fell over the room. Not awkward, more like everyone suddenly got what he was saying. Ethan looked down for a second, then back up. I work almost every weekend, sometimes till late. I try my best in school too, but most of the time I'm just tired. And sometimes it feels like nobody even sees me, like I'm just part of the background noise. He paused. His voice stayed steady, but his hands were shaking a little. I don't know if I'm asking a question or just venting, he said, but I think a lot of us feel like this. For a moment, no one clapped. No one moved. Then Daniel stood up from his chair. He walked toward Ethan, not like a big-shot CEO, but like someone who understood. He reached out and shook his hand. Thank you, Daniel said. That was the most real thing I've heard in a long time. Some people in the crowd gave small nods. A few whispered, yeah, or, he right though. Daniel let go of his hand and turned to the whole room. For once, he said, smiling, let's not talk about how to make millions. Let's talk about what it means to show up, to work hard when nobody is watching, to keep going even when you don't know if it's worth it. He stepped forward, making eye contact with the workers sitting in front of him. When I was your age, he began, I worked 3 jobs. I cleaned offices at night. I sold newspapers in the morning, and I did yard work on weekends. I wore old shoes that barely held together. I skipped meals so my little brother could eat. He paused, looking around the room. I didn't become successful because I was smart or lucky. I became successful because I never stopped showing up. Because someone, somewhere, believed I deserved a chance. He looked directly at Ethan. And today, he said, that's why I'm here. By now, the whole room was quiet. Phones were down, heads were up. Daniel walked back to the stage, but instead of giving a rehearsed speech, he leaned on the edge and talked like he was sitting with friends. I built my company because I wanted to make sure people didn't have to choose between survival and dreams. Between working and studying, between being responsible and being a kid. He looked around again. And I know this. The real heroes aren't the ones with titles or money. They're the ones doing the work when everyone else is sleeping. Paused. Then he dropped something that made the room sit up straight. That's why we're starting something new, he said. A program for high schoolers who work part-time while going to school. Scholarships, mentorship, job flexibility, support. He smiled. It's called First Step Forward, and it starts today. A wave of soft gasps and whispers passed through the crowd. Ethan couldn't believe it. He wasn't expecting this. None of them were. Daniel pointed at him again. You, he said, you're going to be the first person in the program. Ethan blinked. Was this real? Applause started slowly, then grew louder. Not forced. Real. Some people turned to look at him. Others were already pulling out their phones to tell their friends. Ethan didn't know what to say. He just nodded. Later, as the event ended and people started to leave, Ethan stayed behind. Daniel saw him and walked over. You okay? He asked. Ethan nodded. Just shocked, I guess. Daniel smiled. You shouldn't be. You deserve this. He handed Ethan a small card. Keep in touch. We've got work to do. Ethan looked at the card. It wasn't flashy. Just a name and a number. He slipped it into his pocket. As he walked out of the mall, the sun was starting to set. The lights inside the food court flickered to life. People laughed and ordered food like always. Nothing seemed different. But Ethan felt something shift. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was finally being seen. Whatever it was, it felt good. Ethan walked home that evening with a strange mix of emotions. His feet were sore, His back ached, and his uniform still smelled like fried food. But something inside him felt lighter than it had in weeks, maybe even months. The card Daniel gave him was still in his pocket. He hadn't looked at it again since he put it away. It felt important, like a promise written on paper. He passed by the same bus stop where he usually waited after work. The bench was cracked, graffiti-covered one side, but tonight it didn't look so bad. Tonight it felt like part of a bigger picture. By the time he got home, his parents were already sitting at the table having dinner. His mom looked up first. "You're back late," she said. "I stayed after the event," Ethan replied. His dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. "How did it go?" Ethan shrugged, but then smiled without meaning to. "It was different." His mom raised an eyebrow. "Different good?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "Different good." He sat down and grabbed a plate. They didn't press him for details, which he was grateful for. He wasn't sure how to explain what happened yet, not in a way that would make sense. That night after dinner and homework, he finally took out the card. It just had a name, a title, and a phone number. No fancy logo or gold lettering, just Daniel Mercer and the words Founder, Forward Foundation. Ethan stared at it for a long time before putting it on his desk next to his school books. The next few days passed like normal. Work, school, sleep, repeat. But things started to shift slowly. First, the video of Ethan's question and Daniel's response started showing up online. Someone had recorded it during the event and posted it without asking. At first, it was just a small clip shared on a local group. Then it spread. People were commenting, "This is real. We need more voices like this. This kid deserves everything." Ethan didn't know what to think when he saw it. He hadn't expected anyone outside the room to see it. Now strangers were tagging him in posts, sending him messages, saying they related to what he said. Some were workers like him, teens holding down jobs while trying to study. Others were adults who remembered feeling the same way when they were young. One message stood out. "Keep going. You're not invisible anymore." Ethan read it twice. Then he closed his phone and went back to studying. A week later, he got a call. At first, he thought it was a scam. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something told him to answer. "Hello?" he said. "Hey, is this Ethan?" came a calm voice. "Yeah. This is Daniel Mercer, from the event." Ethan nearly dropped the phone. "Oh, yeah, hi. Yes, sir." Daniel laughed. "Relax. I'm not calling to interview you or anything. I just wanted to say thanks again for speaking up. What you said really moved people." Ethan blinked. "Oh, I didn't think anyone would take it that seriously." "Well, they did," Daniel said. "And we want to do more. That's why I'm reaching out. We're starting the First Step Forward program next month, and I'd love for you to be part of it." Ethan's heart jumped. "What does that mean exactly?" he asked. "It means mentorship, support, maybe some summer opportunities. And most importantly, someone who understands what you're going through will be there to help guide you." Ethan didn't know what to say. I don't know what to say. Yes, definitely yes." Daniel chuckled. "Good. We'll send you more info soon. Talk again soon." They hung up. Ethan sat on his bed, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. For once, he didn't feel like he was barely keeping up. For once, he felt like he was moving forward. Word about the program started spreading fast. Local news picked it up. A reporter reached out to Ethan's school asking if he could talk about what happened. His teacher pulled him aside one morning. "There's a reporter here," she said. Ethan froze. "About me?" She nodded. "You've become kind of a big deal." "I didn't mean to," he mumbled. She smiled. "Sometimes doing the right thing makes you one." He met the reporter in the hallway. She introduced herself and asked if he was okay with being filmed for a short segment. He hesitated. Cameras made him nervous. But he thought about all the other kids working behind counters, cleaning floors, helping families survive. If his story could help even one of them get noticed, maybe it was worth it. So he agreed. Later that day, the clip aired. Not too long, just a minute or two. Ethan talked about work, school, and how hard it can be to balance both. He mentioned Daniel's speech and the new program. He ended with something simple. We just want to be seen. To know that what we do matters. That night his phone buzzed nonstop. More messages, more comments. Some people offered help. Others shared their own stories. A janitor at the mall texted him, "You spoke for all of us. Thank you." Ethan read it and smiled. Back at work, things started changing. The manager called a meeting. She announced that the company had reviewed their youth employment policies. Starting next month, there would be better scheduling for students, more flexibility, and a new scholarship fund for teen workers. No one could believe it. Ethan looked around. People were smiling, some were whispering excitedly. After the meeting, one of his coworkers slapped his back. "You started all this," he said. Ethan shook his head. "Nah, I just said what everyone else was thinking." But deep down he knew something had shifted. Weeks turned into months. Ethan kept working, kept going to school. But now, things felt different. He had a mentor from the Forward Foundation, a guy named Alex who used to work 3 jobs in college. They talked every week. Alex gave advice on time management, school, even how to talk to teachers when things got overwhelming. Ethan started sleeping better, eating regular meals. He even joined the school debate team, something he never thought he'd have time. For one afternoon, he got another call from Daniel. "Big plans ahead," Daniel said. "We're hosting a youth summit next month, speakers, mentors, workshops, and we'd like you to speak." Ethan's eyes widened. "Me? Speak in front of people?" Daniel laughed. "You handled a crowd at the mall. You can handle this." Ethan wasn't sure, but he said yes anyway. When he told his parents, they were stunned. "You're going to give a speech?" his mom asked. He nodded. "Guess so." His dad looked proud. "You've come a long way, son." On the day of the summit, Ethan stood backstage, nerves twisting in his stomach. He watched as students filled the hall, teens like him, working, studying, surviving. He saw teachers, mentors, and leaders taking seats. Daniel was already on stage, welcoming everyone. Then his name was called. Ethan stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. He looked out at the crowd, and for a moment he remembered who he was. Not just a speaker, not just a student, but a worker, a dreamer, someone who once felt invisible. He smiled, then he began. "I didn't expect any of this to happen," he said. "All I did was speak up, and suddenly someone listened." He paused. "And if I can teach you anything today, it's this. Don't be afraid to speak up, even when it feels like nobody cares, because sometimes just one voice can change everything." Applause rose. Ethan looked out, heart full. He wasn't just talking for himself anymore. He was talking for everyone who showed up every day, even when it was hard, even when no one seemed to notice. Ethan kept showing up, to work, to school, to life. But now things felt different. Not easier, not always, but different. Like he was walking a path that finally had some light on it. The Forward Foundation program had started making real changes. More students were joining the support group at school. Some were even getting help with schedules so they could study without burning out. A few got summer internships through the foundation. Others found mentors who helped them apply for college or trade programs. Ethan didn't see himself as a leader. He still wore the same old sneakers, still carried his backpack like everyone else, still showed up early for shifts and stayed late if needed. But people listened when he talked now. Sometimes it felt weird, like he was just saying what everyone else already knew, but no one had dared to say out loud. Still, he kept speaking up, not because he wanted attention, but because someone had finally given him a chance to be heard, and he wasn't going to waste it. One afternoon after school, Ethan got called into the principal's office. He walked in slowly, unsure of what to expect. The secretary smiled and pointed him toward the door. Inside, the principal was sitting behind her desk. She motioned for him to sit. "I've been watching your work with the student group," she said, "and I have to say it's made a difference." Ethan blinked. "Thanks," she nodded. "We want to do more." and we'd like you to help lead something bigger. Ethan leaned forward. Like what? A citywide program, she said. A network of student-led support groups across schools. We're calling it Step Up. You'd be part of the team that helped start it. Ethan didn't know what to say. I don't know if I'm the right person for that. The principal smiled. You are, because you understand what these students are going through better than anyone. He left the office feeling stunned. It wasn't just about him anymore. This was bigger than one speech or one event. This was about helping others find their voice, and just like he did. Work still came first. That weekend, Ethan was back at the food kiosk. Same uniform, same long hours. But something had changed in how he saw the place. He used to feel invisible behind the counter, just another face in the crowd, handing out trays and wiping tables. Now he saw the people around him differently. There was Maria, who worked full-time while raising her younger siblings. There was Luis, who studied at night after closing the store. There was Anaya, who dreamed of becoming a nurse but barely had time to eat between shifts. They weren't just co-workers. They were fighters, survivors, dreamers. And for the first time, Ethan realized he wasn't alone in this struggle. He started talking to them more, asking how they were doing, sharing tips on balancing school and work. Sometimes just sitting together, during breaks and letting silence hang without pressure. It was small stuff, but it mattered. One evening, after a long shift, Ethan got a call from Daniel. Hey, Daniel said. How's everything going? Ethan sighed. Tiring, but good. Daniel chuckled. That's the best kind of tired. They talked for a bit about school, about work, about the new program Ethan was helping start. Then Daniel said something unexpected. There's an internship coming up, he said, at our foundation. Summer program, mentorship included, paid. Ethan paused. For me? For you, Daniel confirmed. If you're interested. Ethan didn't answer right away. He thought about how many times he had turned down opportunities before because he couldn't afford to take unpaid time off work, because he didn't think he deserved it. But this time it was different. He had earned this. Yeah, he said finally. I'm in. Daniel laughed. Good. We'll send over the details. When Ethan hung up, he stood outside for a moment, looking up at the sky. The stars were barely visible through the city lights, but they were there, just like hope. School ended soon after. Summer brought heat, longer days, and more responsibility. Ethan still worked, but now he also met with the Step Up team once a week. They planned how to roll out the support groups in other schools. They shared ideas, created guides, and recorded short videos to help students connect. Ethan wasn't used to being on camera. At first, he fumbled over words, forgot lines, and stared too much at the floor. But slowly, he got better. Not because he became perfect, but because he learned that being real was more important than being polished. People didn't need a flawless speaker. They needed someone who understood, and that was exactly what he was. Midway through summer, Ethan went to his first official mentor meeting at the Forward Foundation office. It was in a building downtown. Not too fancy, but clean and bright. People moved around with purpose, talking on phones, typing on laptops, passing each other with quick smiles. He sat in a small room with his assigned mentor, a woman named Layla who had grown up working 3 jobs just like him. They talked for over an hour, about goals, about fears, about what came next. Layla looked at him and said, "You've already done more than most adults ever will. But this is just the beginning." Ethan smiled. "Feels like I'm just figuring things out." "That's okay," she said. "So is everyone else." Back home, life continued. His parents still worked hard. His little sister still asked questions about college. His dog still barked at every delivery guy. But now, when Ethan came home after a long day, he didn't just collapse on the couch. He sat with his family, talked about his day, shared stories. Sometimes he read, Sometimes he played music. Sometimes he just sat in silence enjoying the peace. He still got tired, still had moments where he questioned if he was doing enough, still worried about the future. But now, he had tools, support, hope, and most importantly, he had people who believed in him. One night as he was getting ready for bed, he checked his phone. There was a message from Daniel. "Keep going. You're building something real." Ethan smiled. He put his phone down and looked out the window. Outside, the city was quiet. Lights flickered in distant buildings. A breeze passed through the open window. He climbed into bed, pulled the covers up, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring more work, more meetings, more challenges. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of what came next, because he knew one thing for sure. Every step forward, no matter how small, was still a step in the right direction. Ethan stood backstage, adjusting his shirt for what felt like the 10th time in 5 minutes. The room was buzzing. Speakers were warming up. Students filled the seats. Cameras rolled quietly in the background. The event was bigger than anything he had ever been part of before. He looked out through the curtain. Rows and rows of young faces stared back, some nervous, some curious, some hopeful. Teachers sat along the sides. Mentors moved between tables. In the front row, Daniel was already seated watching the stage with a calm smile. Ethan took a deep breath. This wasn't just another speech. This was the official launch of Step Up, the citywide student support program he helped start, and he was speaking first. When they called his name, he stepped onto the stage like he had done it 100 times before. But inside, his heart was pounding. He walked to the center, looked out at the crowd and smiled. "Hi," he said. A few people chuckled. Some waved. Most just watched, waiting. "I know this might sound weird," he continued, "but I used to hate being seen." There was a pause. Then a ripple of quiet agreement passed through the audience. "I worked all the time," he said. "I barely slept. I never talked about how hard it was. I thought if I stayed quiet, I could just push through it." He paused, looking down for a second. "But then one day I spoke up. Not because I wanted attention, just because I needed someone to hear me." He looked back up, and someone did. That's when the room shifted. Eyes lit up, shoulders relaxed. A few people nodded like they understood exactly what he meant. "That moment changed everything," Ethan said. "Not because I became famous or got special treatment, but because someone finally saw me for who I really was. Not just a worker, not just a student, but a person trying my best to make things better." He smiled. "And now, we're doing that for each other." After his speech, the energy in the room changed. Students started sharing their own stories during the open mic session. Some talked about working late shifts. Others shared how hard it was to keep up with school while helping at home. A few even mentioned feeling invisible, until today. Ethan watched from the side as one teen after another stood up and spoke. It reminded him of himself months ago. Tired, frustrated, unsure if anyone would listen. Now he knew the answer. Someone always listens, if you give them the chance. Back at school, Step Up launched officially. Ethan didn't run it alone. There were teachers, mentors, and students helping too. But he was still part of it, still showing up, still talking. Sometimes he led meetings. Sometimes he just listened. But every time he made sure no one felt alone. His group grew. More students joined. They shared tips, supported each other, and sometimes just sat together during lunch without saying much. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't dramatic. But it mattered. Work was still work. He still woke up early, still wore the same uniform, still wiped tables and took orders. But now when he looked around, he didn't see just coworkers, and he saw friends. People who showed up even when they were tired. People who kept going, even when nobody noticed. One afternoon, after a long shift, Maria came over. "You've changed things around here," she said. Ethan shook his head. "Nah, I just said what everyone else was thinking." She smiled. "Still counts." They sat outside for a bit, eating sandwiches and watching the sunset. Maria talked about her younger brother, how she was saving money for his school supplies, how sometimes it felt like she was barely keeping up. Ethan listened, nodded, shared a little of his own story too. By the time they went back inside, both of them looked a little lighter. Daniel kept in touch. Sometimes it was just a quick text. How? Are you holding up? Other times they met in person. Coffee, walks, long talks about life, goals, and what came next. One day, Daniel asked him, "What do you want your future to look like?" Ethan didn't have an exact answer. He had dreams, big ones, but he wasn't sure how to reach them yet. "I guess I want to help people," he said, "like how you helped me." Daniel smiled. "You already are." Months passed. Ethan graduated high school with honors. He gave a short speech at the ceremony. Nothing flashy, just a few honest words. He thanked his parents, his teachers, his friends, and the people who helped him realize that showing up was enough. Then he walked across the stage, cap and gown on, diploma in hand. His family cheered. His mentor clapped. His old co-workers shouted from the back, and for once he let himself enjoy it. No rush, no pressure, just pride. That summer, he started college. It wasn't easy. There were days when he struggled to keep up, days when he missed work, days when he wondered if he belonged. But he kept going. He joined a student support group on campus, volunteered at community events, even helped organize a local version of Step Up at a nearby high school. And every now and then, he got messages from students who remembered his story. "Your speech was the reason I kept going. I almost quit, but then I remembered what you said. Thanks for making me feel seen." He read every one of them. Then he tucked his phone away and kept moving forward, because that's what he had learned. Life doesn't stop being hard just because you try your best. But if you keep showing up, even when it's tough, eventually things start to change, not overnight. Not perfectly, but they change. One evening, Ethan sat outside the Forward Foundation office waiting for Daniel. The sky was dark. The city lights flickered. The air was cool. He looked around, remembering where it all began. Just a food kiosk. A small event, one question, and a man who actually listened. Daniel walked out, smiling as usual. "You ready?" he asked. Ethan nodded. They started walking side by side. For a while, they didn't talk, just walked, enjoying the silence. Then Daniel said, "You've come a long way." Ethan smiled. "So have you." They both laughed. Then Daniel added, "You know, you're not just surviving anymore. You're building something." Ethan thought. About it, he was still working, still studying, still tired more often than not. But yes, he was building something. A future, a movement. A life where hard work didn't go unnoticed, where dreams didn't have to be put on hold, where showing up, even when no one seemed to care, and was still enough. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most important thing of all.